Welcome to the Pitchwerks podcast. I'm Scot McTaggart. Over the last 20 years, I've been a sales rep, a marketer, a manager, an executive, a consultant, and an advisor. This show is designed to give you access to my list of contacts so that you can learn more about how to present your ideas at work and succeed in your career.
Startups and salespeople, marketers and managers from the Epicast Network in Pittsburgh. It's the Pitchwerks podcast.
There was a while there was a window where that language had gravitas.
Yes.
Where you would just say, you would proclaim that a thing, an establishment.
I'm the guy who says when stuff is broken.
Broken.
Right. Oh my God.
Oh my
Kevin,
God.
Did you go there?
Oh my God.
He went there.
Pediatric medicine is broken.
Oh my. I hold it so sacred.
Action figures are broken.
Yes.
Banana pudding is broken.
Hey everybody, it is Scott, it is Wednesday, it is your Pitchwerks podcast, and it is Kevin Kelly and Rhabit, and Rhabit is spelled with an H. It's RHABIT.co. Kevin's working on cool stuff. I just enjoy talking to this gentleman. I'm fascinated by the way his mind works. I think you're going to like it too. Before we jump into this week's episode, first of all, if this is the first time you're hearing the show and you enjoy sales and marketing and startups, well, let's do this more often. Subscribe to this fine program in whatever your podcast app is, and we will deliver a brand new episode every week on Wednesday. It's just that easy. There's a website. It's at pitchwerks.com, Pitchwerks. There's a social media. There's actually more than one. There is a plethora of social media channels out there to be consumed. And all of this is just designed to basically help you sharpen your tools and get better at what you do. So check us out online, on social medias, listen to the show. We try to be behind every door, and frankly, we're almost there. So let's talk to Kevin. Cool startup, really interesting idea, and honestly, a great pitch too. He's really good at it. Kevin Kelly, welcome down to Allentown for the Epicast Studios and the Pitchwerks podcast, man.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited to be here. It's first time down here in this space, but it's awesome. It's a lovely, audiophiles dungeon.
Which
is fantastic.
That's putting a little bit more emphasis on the file part of audiophile than I'm probably comfortable without changing the rating of the program. So we're going to keep plowing through. 100% true-blooded compliment. I love talking to you, and I'm so glad that you're behind that microphone.
Thank you.
One of the things that I get out of doing this show is talking to people who have a completely different and unpredictable approach to these conversations. Right?
All right.
And I don't mean like crazy out there, just like, wouldn't it be funny if I did something absurd? That's easy to do, right?
Yeah.
It's when somebody brings something that has legitimate value into a conversation and you didn't see it coming. And that is such a great part of our conversations. So I want to catch everybody up with what you're working on.
Sure.
So you're one of the founders of Rhabit, you and Alexander.
Yeah.
But as I was trying to come up with a way that I could sort of give a nice intro, I realized I don't think I was doing you justice because it's an expansive idea.
Yeah, it is. It's a big idea.
Can you just kind of try to tell us what you're using now as an explanation?
Yeah. So I think right now what we say is it kind of depends on your audience. You're always looking at your message for whatever you're pitching, whatever your product is and where you're placing it. You do want to fine tune it to that target audience. Like if you're telling it to a customer, you're telling it to your mother, you're telling it to a user, or whatever that looks like. The way we like to broadly think about what we're doing at Rhabit is that we're changing the way companies measure and develop their talent and culture.
There you go. Because even when you and I talked about it at first, you had said, well, there are different drivers for why someone would even want to talk to me. So I have to respect that before I even start talking to them. But I don't have that opportunity when we're talking about doing the show, right? Because some of the folks that are going to be listening to this might be really interested in developing their people as like meeting some sort of metric or helping them to get to a point that you know that they can get to, but they need some help. And then there's other people who they're more worried about, like, can we be on the lookout for, say, warning signs? Like this person's not as engaged as they were.
Or can I stop a Google memo?
Right.
Which is like, or detect that a Google memo is brewing. just to stay in like kind of the realm of a lot of the things that are front of mind for our industry of people that care about talent and culture. It's really interesting. You're seeing this changing of the guard really in the executives and the senior leaders in these spaces, wherein they're even changing the term. So it used to be that these were HR people.
Okay.
And now you're seeing that the word people starts to come in front of it. So a quick signal, the litmus test of how serious and culture oriented a given company is do they have a chief people officer, or do they have a CHRO, or the title and the nomenclature is this actual indicative thing?
I haven't seen many of the CHRO. I was actually going to, when you gave the chief people officer example, I was going to jump in there with, or a vice president of HR.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Typically,
which I think is also in the same.
Right. That's another thing. Within our space, we see a lot of the senior leaders and executives sort of fighting for their seat at the table. They always talk to us. It doesn't matter if you're at a 50-person company or you're at P&G. You're always trying to prove the value of what you do,
right,
and really earn your spot in terms of the pecking order of operations, of sales, of marketing. And you're sort of over here, if you're from the traditional HR space, of HR is important, people are important, culture is important.
Yeah.
And they've been waving their arms for years. But now I think what's happened is this stuff, through the unfortunate sort of incidents that we've encountered, and especially in the tech world and the venture world, it's coming to the surface, and it's not the best way to get the big seat at the table, but it's the thing that sort of had to happen for people to wake up and say, oh yeah, the culture that we build has serious ramifications to our company,
to every aspect. But before we get to that, though, I want to press you a little bit more on sort of the theory of operation, right? So I decide to engage Rhabit, and you come in, you take some measurements, talk to some people. What is my experience as the rank and file employee who wasn't involved in the transaction? What do I experience after you've left?
We don't leave, first of all. So it's perpetual. Once Rhabit's in your space and you're operating with us, we're a tool. We replace or supplement traditional processes in your HR space. So maybe today you have or don't have, which is, you could be both, a performance management process, or you use 360 assessments for your leadership, or you have engagement surveys. We are a totally different approach that just changes the way in which you measure this.
Right.
And so for the end user, what the manifestation of this is some really deep insights into how you're perceived in your work sphere. And we continuously update these things to show you how you're changing over time. And we don't just tell you sort of where you are and where you're performing. We give you some guidance and structure on how to get better.
So I'm receiving data about myself.
Yeah, you get feedback.
Am I putting data in?
Yes, you're absolutely.
Okay.
The data that you're putting in, though, is not self-assessment. It's feedback for others. Because there's a really good reason that we don't rely on self-assessment. There's this phenomenon. It's actually called the Dunning-Kruger effect. And these guys, they won a Nobel Prize in 2000 in psychology for this work. And the Dunning-Kruger effect basically states that when you perform through the same sort of set of skills or tools or abilities that you do to self-assess. So if you don't have the awareness or mastery of a skill set, you don't know the gaps in that.
Right.
We would then self-assess and say, oh, my customer focus skills are just top notch. I would self-rate myself as doing really well. I'm going to write on my performance review that I do such a great job of engaging with the customers.
I often joke that there are people who won't look at their bank account because they don't want to find out that there's no money in it.
Or they don't want to go to the doctor because
right.
they're scared
because they'll find out that they have something, right? And I think that type of thinking figures in here too, right? I think that the idea that you just say everything's fine in your self-assessment is also sitting kitty corner to the, well, it's fine. I don't need to check my bank balance. I'm sure there's money in there. I need to write one check and it'll all be all right.
Yeah. Well, human beings can be very fear driven. It's one of our sort of core fundamental wirings, right? So
right, kept us alive this long.
Yeah. So you're scared that if you sort of acknowledge something, that this is sending a signal of weakness, and that in this ecosystem of these things, you may get eaten. And in this case, you're not getting eaten, but you showing the sign of weakness or this vulnerability or this flaw. It's not actually humility, but again, perceived as weakness. And so this tendency to do this will also affect self-assessment and not to drag on self-assessment too long. Basically, nutshell, it's a waste of time.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work.
Very good.
So we don't do it.
No, and so I'm giving some data that doesn't figure into my own score. I'm getting data about sort of how I can improve and what the company thinks or what my coworkers think I'm doing in terms of progress, in terms of goal attainment, those types of things.
Yeah, in terms of the types of skills that you've said, you either want to understand how good you are to get feedback and grow, or the ones that maybe the company has said, these are important for people in your role, for the kind of work you do. These are kind of the leading indicators that you would be a rock star at these things.
Now, how did you get involved in all this?
So I got involved with this. I met my co-founder, Alexander. We worked at a company here in Pittsburgh. And it's called DDI. It was a talent management company, and we kind of bonded over our love of software. And through as a sort of professional progression, I'd say it got to the point where we felt like we loved making really useful software.
Yeah,
like fundamentally, we love technology. We like building things. And this area of people and culture was a place that we had this magnetic attraction to. We had worked for a really good company in DDI that has a really great culture.
I've heard great things.
Yeah. I think they have a lot to figure out on the product side, but they've got just a really great people culture. Mm-hmm. And so us kind of the signaling that we had gotten from this and been ingrained us, the importance of this, what we wanted to do was build a really cool tool around this idea, around measurement, around performance, around culture, all this stuff. And we wanted to we really wanted to push the envelope and get rid of writing things. We based a lot of this stuff on the military systems and styles that have come out of the post-World War II era, as we kind of came back with a huge population of folks that needed jobs. And so as we staffed those people and filled up factories and manufacturing, the systems that came out and the processes that came out of these things, rigid hierarchies, for example, typical, like a manager, subordinates, and then they have middle managers, subordinates. This structure, it has long-standing military roots, but then came out of these industrializations where you have, peacetime and the ability and commerce and capitalism merging with these military-style structures. And this produces this framework that we then sort of build processes around. So then we build tools to enable those processes. And at some point, it was writing down things. And then it moved forward. People said, "Oh, we've got software now. We'll do this in Excel, or we'll do this in tools that are
the
just
next logical step, right?"
And then it progresses, and we have specialized software, web forms, mobile tools, all these things. And now what we've decided to do, and this is where we really were passionate about this, is that I don't want to make a product that's another fix for a broken process. I think that's the most cop-out thing. When I see a pitch that starts with, "This process is completely broken."
Oh, I hate that.
Right. Then it's not that the process is broken. It's that there's a fundamental problem we are trying to solve, and maybe we don't understand it thoroughly, or we haven't been equipped with the tools and techniques yet to really tackle this thing effectively.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the laziest sentences. Whatever it is, whatever we're talking about, it's government, it's healthcare, it's hiring, it's diversity, it's whatever it is that we want to make a large pronouncement, it's broken.
Right. There was a while there was a window where that language had gravitas.
Yes.
Where you would just say, you would proclaim that a thing, an establishment.
I'm the guy who says when stuff is broken. Right. Oh my God.
Oh my
Kevin,
God.
did you go there?
Oh my God.
He went there.
Pediatric medicine is broken.
Oh my. I hold it so sacred.
Action figures are broken.
Yes.
Banana pudding is broken.
Did I mention I'm really glad you came in?
I mean, maybe that's what I'm tackling next is just how broken banana pudding is. Like, there's a better way to fix this.
I am trying to conceive of a way in which banana pudding is
maybe
not
you toast
broken.
the wafers first, and then they really stand up. If anybody's listening from like per se in New York, how would you guys tackle, a nice Thomas Keller restaurant? How are they going to do a banana pudding? I just want to see the next wave of this. Sorry,
that's the unpredictable stuff I'm talking
listen,
about.
I'm from the South. I've kind of perpetual banana pudding on the mind. I miss some core things. I miss chicken and dumplings. I miss vinegar-based barbecue. I miss banana pudding. If I could have dinner right now down south, I'd go home and make mom make those things. She'd hate me for it because chicken and dumplings takes forever.
Right.
And but she'd do it lovingly. So love you, mom. Thanks.
I'm so glad though that you see it the same way I do, because I feel like a crazy person sometimes telling people tone it down.
The broken thing now.
Why? I don't want, and I don't understand why anybody would want the proclaimer. I want the person who goes, I've got the answer, or I've got an idea, or hey,
or we tried this and it worked.
Yeah, right. Let's not get crazy now, right?
Yeah, but some of it comes from pattern matching, though, right? So there was there was definitely a phase where that phrasing worked really well.
Yeah.
It got people attention. And so you just pattern match and you do it, and then you get diminished returns, right? Like, it's no longer interesting or unique or whatever. So now if you don't, you have to iterate, right? You got to go with the next level.
Right.
I'm not sure if I have detected the broken thing. I see a lot of pitches and see a lot of stuff being out there as someone that talks to investors and does the things we do as founders.
Politics. That's where you see it.
Politics is, I don't want to touch that with
No. I'm not saying anything other than going back to your pattern matching.
Yeah.
They probably looked at which campaigns were successful, and they were the ones that said, let's just burn everything down. Right.
Well, yeah, pattern matching is a good thing and a bad thing in a lot of ways, especially as an entrepreneur and a startup. So pattern matching comes into play almost explicitly when you're talking to investors, because these are the pattern matching machines, right? Like, they want to see, they know the boundaries of things
I had
they want to
success
see
with the computer hardware company in 1980, and let's see if there's any others out there.
Right, or just you know what? I founded a bunch of people, and I look back through my investment portfolio, and everybody that hit 10K MRR by this time was successful. So that's my new threshold. Not going into a single pre-revenue thing now. Like, we're de-risking by this measure. I saw a great post that was that everything correlates, and it's this guy that pointed out, just going through all this large data sets at Google. I think it was a Googler that was talking about how basically snowfall correlates with rise in cancer, right? Like basically, it's just ridiculous things, right? Like a dearth of banana pudding means that the funding climate's awful. So you're already looking for outliers in general when you're doing these things, and now you're claiming that you've got patterns and outliers, which is interesting to me, like how that works, how you think about that. So I think it's powerful for lots of signals, but I would caution anyone to not underestimate combinatorial effects of complex systems.
There's too many points to track.
Yeah,
it's not dirty or clean.
And Scott, the biggest thing in that.
Yeah.
It's the people.
It is the people.
Yeah, they're totally different. Like, how many people do you know that are
I was trying not to give you the ball on the tee is
right?
what I was doing.
Right. But if every aspect of two companies on paper was exactly identical,
right,
but they are run by different people, they are going to have different outcomes.
You steered this train back on its track really nicely right there. Because I mean, it's core to your mission.
Yeah.
I have a theory that you're going to be successful because people don't want to have the big pronounced meeting. Right? Like, if someone is slightly outside of tolerances, I don't want to have to sit down with someone and have a scoldy kind of a meeting. Right?
No, it breaks trust.
It does break trust. Yeah. And it definitely makes me feel as though you're trying to threaten something larger.
Yeah. And you can't go back from it, right? And that's all negative signaling and negative feedback are a thing that's necessary a lot of times. But there's a right way and wrong way to package this stuff up. So what we think about at Rhabit when we have to tell somebody the tough deal, that they're not very good at their communication skills, or if they're a boss who is not doing a good job of following up with work that they've assigned to other people, that's a great place for a really wonderful software experience to step in and be that early communicator of this, to frame it positively, to control this language. And so now, instead of having a human being and relying on a person to have a really great ability to communicate these things, a really high empathy, to be articulate and to check for understanding, you've got this thing, this software system, this solution that can present things in the ideas of text or pictures or videos or all these different experiences.
A softer touch.
That can control the tone of which they do these things, can pick the exact right words, and can make these decisions based on research and evidence in the organizational psychology field, which is our bailiwick, versus what they feel at the time. They really just, I got to get this off my chest and have this emotional moment. Removing emotion while respecting emotion is kind of the approach there, right? So you remove the emotion from you respect the emotion of the person receiving the signal, and you tightly control the emotionality of the signal they get.
That is actually where I wanted to go. So you don't seem like you have any problem with your pitch. So whatever's working for you is fine, but I want to suggest something to you, which I kind of fell in love with.
Okay.
The idea that we fly by the seat of our pants in that verbal warning, which in most company handbooks, verbal warning is your first step towards discipline, right? You know, right?
Yeah, that's my first step with my 1-year-old towards discipline, right?
Well, there is that too, right? You know, it is kind of
hey, don't. Yeah.
Well, in the corporate environment though,
yeah,
you call in sick 4 times in 2 months, right? Someone comes and visits you and says, Kevin, right? So this is already off on the wrong foot. It's not that you didn't know you were sick, number one. Number two, whether or not you were sick is not something that they can prove or disprove at this point. But the fact that a verbal warning has to take place does break trust, to use your terminology, because now I feel like I'm under attack for having gotten sick.
You're on the defensive. You're on the back foot.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now we have put all of our chips into the middle of the table. As far as this employee, keeping this employee with us, assuming that they're a valued member of our team and they are here on purpose, right? We've put all our chips on this HR verbal warning, having the appropriate communication, the right script, the right empathy, the right listening. And if I'm you, I want to zoom way in on the risk of that transaction. Because risk aversion is not something we talk about in this context. We talk about the third step, which is typically like suspension and termination, as being where the risk lives. Oh, we could get sued, or they could claim unemployment, or those are the things that always get the spotlight. But if someone that I really value on the team feels as though they're being interrogated for nothing more than getting the flu, right? The risk is we gave this to someone to give a verbal warning, and now all of a sudden it's a very tense environment. That's where I think you'll have success, is helping people to understand how much they're gambling on that first intervention.
Yeah, and I think that the thing that's key in this whole equation is that leader, that manager, that first point of contact to check to see if anything's wrong. And there's a ton of interest in that space of how do you solve this problem. You kind of have all these, you talk about complexity, and we'll try to keep this a little high level, but it's where did that leader come from, and what is the skill set that they've got, and how good is that skill set? Will be some predictors of that outcome. Okay. So a lot of times you'll find a leader that it's not their first management gig. They've had teams and people before. They're high empathy. They get it. They're in a very strategic role where their expectations are to drive an effective team. And then you might have what we've seen in the startup world a lot, and especially in these rapidly growing ones, guys that used to wear the superhero cape, used to do everything, have their hands in everything, in the weeds, and now you try to transition them to these strategic roles. And it is a totally different skill set.
I think that people make the assumption they already understand management, or at least they put on the brave face, right?
Right.
And I think that is a hurdle. And I'm trying to work the problem backwards and say, I'm not saying that you don't understand management. I'm saying that you may have placed too much focus on the end risk and not enough on the early risk. Especially considering, think about the way the job market is right now.
Yeah, I was going to say that the thing that helps in that argument is turnover, the rising millennial workforce. Here's our M word.
Horrible people.
Check that buzzword bingo, guys.
If you had millennials,
yeah, no, but younger people are a little less loyal. Like they just move around. They're more transient because if they're skilled, because what we've done is the skilled roles in org thing, those are more complex, right? They do more things. They use tools that take longer to train people on. But
now hold up. I got to call you on one thing there, though.
Yeah.
I don't think that is a one-sided discussion about who's loyal to whom.
Okay, sure. Absolutely.
That's
so
for me.
there's a cultural thing on there, and you are correct.
Yeah.
That is a two-way street.
If anything,
but what I would
they got
say is
betrayed
that
first.
it's you have a workforce that is increasingly more skilled and that skill's valuable.
Yeah.
And it takes a long time to imbue that skill. So it's hard to build pipeline.
Yeah.
So what happens is when you turn people over, you have markets that are getting increasingly competitive. It's harder and harder to find really good people explicitly more on the West Coast on software development. Even here in Pittsburgh, it's hard to find really great software talent, for example. And so until that pipeline problem is solved for these things, you're going to have this. And so this increases the criticality of that interaction. And this is the message to your VC. This is the message I give to a VC or an investor I'm talking to is not only is this thing valuable, but I want you to think about the impact Rhabit could have at your portfolio companies, because what I can do for you is lower that turnover of these key assets and stop the early rise of the Google memo culture.
Yeah.
Right? And assist with this nearly impossible transition for a lot of folks of going from the superhero individual contributor to being the true leader of a growing, rapid, evolving team that brings in talent because you're constantly recruiting in that mode, and then really keeps it because it was hard to get them.
I love it.
And that's really how we pitch to it.
If I'm a VC, that's my concern.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's why I love to always include that in the conversation with our investors right now is, fundamentally, yeah, great. Funding's good. That'll help me achieve our goals in terms of where we want to go and roadmap and everything else. But we can have some serious impact in your portfolio companies.
Just making sure that everybody keeps pushing in the same direction.
Or you just have something. So a big thing
because you didn't screw it up.
Well, now you have comparable metrics, right? Because these guys are used to data-driven organizations. A data-driven organization is a standard now, right? You run your sales through a CRM. You run your marketing channels through analytics. You do all of these things, all these systems. But what's your people system?
Right. Do you find yourself streamlining the product down? Like you started with something larger and you're kind of being pushed towards a certain end by either the customers or the investors who want you to focus maybe on one spotlight?
No, I don't think so. I think that what you do, I think that what I'd say is the way that we approached this and built this thing and that was obsession over one simple idea. So we started sort of microscopic in our focus, and then we're sort of building on from that.
That makes you different than normal, yeah. Because people, I think, typically try to build too many features.
Right, yeah, you can be very feature driven, but what we wanted to do was start at this very small focus on how we measure and how we get signal, and make that experience, that core, that nucleus thing, right? Like really nail that and understand that and make that evocative and interesting to people. Because if we really nail the collection experience, then the world is an open, just perfect. It's our playground, right? It's this great Lego set of data, and I've got all these awesome Legos where I can build something really sweet. And so that's kind of how we started with it. We started with just really simplistic, clean collection and the model that supports the data that we do collect and the signals we get. And from there, this opens up the world of how you visualize these things, how you communicate the content, how you recommend development, all these things. And that's what the benefit is. So you see this in a lot of the coaching I see in kind of incubator and accelerator programs around focusing on the problem, getting real specific, like trying to do something very tight. And I totally agree with that, actually. I think focusing small and on the simplest core idea of how you want to express your solution to the problem,
Yep.
that's the underlying melody in the jazz you're going to play.
I would love to be great at something small and have someone infer that I will be great at future things that I take on, as opposed to that person who tries to carry all the groceries out of the trunk all at once,
Dude,
right?
Yeah.
And then smashes the bread, and you're like, yeah, but I only had to make one trip. I would rather be really good at that small piece.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of times excitement gets the better of us.
Dude, we talked about the feature abyss.
Yeah,
Getting pulled into the feature abyss.
Yeah, before we even turned the mic on,
Yeah.
we were talking about the fact that we were sitting here before you showed up and talking about, just something in the news. And before you realize it, you've wasted half an hour talking about what's possible with a technology that you've never had hands on.
And you'll do this as a founder, as a product manager, which is my background. That's what I was in. Oh, you can just get caught up on talking about, because it's an imaginative, creative space, right?
Yeah.
And if you're a creative person, if you like to create and manifest, then you never turn that engine off. You're always thinking about something, like day in and day out. There's always
even if you're not that
around.
person, you feel pressure that there's a threat that you don't know about, and you've got to keep your brain engaged.
A little bit of that, yeah. That's a different thing that it requires some different coaching around competitive stuff. But what I would say is that what happens is, especially if you put two creatives together, this is when this is the chemical reaction that's formed out of this, right? So like if that's why when my co-founder and I, we have to check ourselves about this, because we do get excited about things we could build and things that we can mock up. And there's a little bit further enabled by, there's a lot of great tools to do these things fast. So you are tempted to try to bake
just
stuff.
never sleep. Yeah.
Yeah, just like
drink a lot of coffee
keep baking new stuff. But the
I
important
need
part
30
is
domain names and 25 developers.
Yeah, absolutely. But you gotta the important part is you always need to do your CNC. This is like Sam Altman Y Combinator advice, and it's so good. It's customers and code. You're either writing code or talking to customers, and we take that really seriously in kind of how we orient ourselves and run things at Rhabit. I'm constantly trying to get either a new prototype or a different version of the software or some experience out in front of a customer and see their feedback. I'm constantly trying to connect to a different person in a different industry to show them what we're doing, because I know that the relationships, all of that whole stack is valuable.
Yeah.
It's valuable to get the relationship. It's valuable to show them and get the feedback. It's valuable to practice communicating this stuff. Like, there's so much to be gained from that. So that's why you're the CNC, man. Like, that's how I would coach any brand new first time entrepreneur. For me, that's been a really impactful thing of going from no idea what I'm doing to operating the business. The CNC focus is real.
Kevin Kelly Rhabit, RHABIT.co. I'm telling you, man, I could talk to you all day. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, really appreciate it. Thanks, Scott.
All right, we hit the half-hour mark and then some, so it's probably time to go. Thank you, Kevin Kelly. Thank you, Rhabit. I'm going to hold you to your promise of tipping back a stool somewhere with me and continuing this conversation. And who knows, it may never end. Check out Rhabit. I like what they're working on, and it's a cool technology. Otherwise, you know what we're going to do. We're going to put another show together. You got about a week before that comes out, unless you're listening late, in which case, you know what? I'm going to let it slide. We're good. If we can do anything for you, hit me up on social media, PITCHWERKS. Again, if this is the first time you're hearing us, please subscribe, or at least consider it. That's all I'm asking for. Sales, marketing, and startups every week. I think you might like it. I'll catch you next week.
The Pitchwerks podcast comes to you from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. A production of the Epicast Network and McTaggart, LLC. Engineering and production by Buzzy Torek and Nick Miller. For more information, show feedback, and ad sales, visit pitchwerks.com. PITCHWERKS.com. On social media, find and follow the show on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram using that same brand name, PITCHWERKS.